Welcome to Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery. I am Mark, the creator of this channel and author of all the works that are presented on it. Throughout my life, I have traveled extensively to all continents and to most of the world's nations. From time to time, I incorporate into my writings information gained from exotic sites. Today's tale is based on my journey in the summer of 25. Using frequent flyer miles, I traveled that year to Venezuela and the Southern Caribbean. The story, Out on a Limbo, was inspired by experiences on the island of Trinidad. This is the perfect time of year to present this story because we're just around the corner from Mardi Gras. As you will note from this tale, there's a price to pay for tourists who do go abroad without careful preparations. Here's the story, Out on a Limbo. "I got 'em," shouted Rudy, gleefully holding the tickets high in the air as he entered the apartment. Belinda shrieked with joy. The young couple embraced and danced wildly about the living room, nearly overturning the coffee table in the excitement. "Let's get the map," suggested the woman. Her tiny eyes sparkled and her nose quivered like a bunny's. "I don't even know where Trinidad is. Somewhere down by Florida, I think." "Actually, it's closer to South America," corrected Rudy. "Don't matter no how. The plane will get us there. While you're getting the map, grab us a couple of beers. We can sit here and dream a little." Rudy could easily have gotten the map himself, but he was used to having his wife serve him. Belinda went to the knick-knack shelf, which contained their entire library of 6 books. She took the atlas, which had been the bonus given for their subscription to Reader's Digest, and tossed it on the sofa beside her husband. Then she went to the kitchen for the Bud Lights. Purchasing them earlier in the day, the 23-year-old woman had been obliged to show proof of age. The pigtails and blue jeans made her look underage. While Belinda fetched the beer, Rudy kicked off his shoes and plopped down on the rug. His face and arms manifested the bruises and scratches accumulated from construction work. Belinda ran in from the kitchen and plopped down beside her man, dangling her bare feet over his so that the scorpion tattoos on their ankles nearly touched. After opening her beer and taking a swig, the young woman rested her head on her spouse's shoulder. She said softly, "Tell me again what it's going to be like." Although 28-year-old Rudy Friesen had never been farther from Cleveland than Pittsburgh, he spoke with swaggering confidence. "Right now, down there in Trinidad, the people are all excited. Mardi Gras, what they call Carnival, is coming. For them, that's the biggest time of the year, bigger than Christmas or New Year's. They've saved their money for months just to buy themselves a fancy costume. When the celebration starts, they get right into it. They go crazy. For 2 days and nights without stopping, they party and dance in nightclubs, in their houses, and in the streets. You've never seen anything like it. They're the happiest people in the world, and we're going to be right there with them." "Oh, sounds wonderful," Belinda sighed. "Yeah," said Rudy. "You got to hear that music of theirs. They play calypso music with steel drums. It's really cool." "You're so smart. You know everything." "You know what's the best thing of all? The limbo. It's a kind of dance they do. You start with a high jump bar, but instead of leaping over it, you go under it while the music is playing. They keep putting the bar lower and lower. The one who goes the lowest wins. I want to try it. I'll bet I can win easily." "Oh, I know you will. I guess you're just about the cleverest man in the whole wide world. But isn't it risky for us to go down there? My mother says you can't trust those foreign people. They're all terrorists and such. and they don't like Americans because we're richer than they are. Nah, down in Trinidad, they're too dumb to be terrorists. Besides, they like Americans. They want our money, trust me. Say, what kind of costume you gonna wear for Carnival? Oh, I don't know. What you ought to get is a pirate outfit. With your earring and your goatee, you'll be perfect. A pirate of the Caribbean, just like Johnny Depp. How about you? I don't know either. I'll think of something. Well, make it sexy. Belinda laughed. The flight carrying the Friesens touched down at Pierce International Airport 3 days before the start of Carnival. Belinda noted, just as Rudy had said, that excitement was in the air. People scurried by with smiles on their faces. Signs on the airport walls welcomed tourists. To the young woman, everything seemed to be just as her husband had described, with one exception. Tugging on Rudy's sleeve, she asked, "Why are there so many black people here? Where are the real people of Trinidad?" Rudy laughed. "Those are the real people," he said. "Most of them are black." "Well, what do you know?" replied Linda, her mouth gaping a bit. The smell of food from the airport cafes caught the woman's attention. "Hey, Rudy, let's buy some candy bars. I'm hungry." The couple stopped at a kiosk that offered periodicals, sodas, and snacks. "2 of those chocolate bars," Belinda said, pointing with her finger. "How much?" $14, said the vendor. "Wow," said the woman. "Prices are really high here." Rudy frowned but reached into his wallet. As he counted out the bills, the merchant said abruptly, No, Trinidad dollar. You got to go to the money changer. That American money no good here." As they walked to the currency exchange booth, Belinda whispered, "I thought you said they wanted our money down here. Guess you don't know everything." Embarrassed that he hadn't known about Trinidad's currency, Rudy said nothing. There was a long line at the exchange booth. At least 10 people were ahead of the Friesens. A sign over the shop's window said, "Today's exchange rate for American dollars is 7 to 1. Pointing to the sign, Belinda asked, "What does that mean?" Not knowing the answer, Rudy replied, I'll tell you later. It's kind of complicated." 15 minutes later, there were still a half dozen people ahead of the pair. Rudy noticed a small black man in a strange hat beckoning him. Soon Belinda asked, "What does that man want?" "Dunno," replied Rudy. "Save our place in line and I'll go find out." The little man said in a low voice, "You want to change American dollar for Trinidad dollar?" "Oh, yeah, that's why we're standing in line." "I give you good exchange rate. How much you want change?" "You change money?" "Yes, I do it here now. You no have to wait in queue. So how much you want to change?" "Oh, $100. "Okay," said the man with a smile. Rudy took $100 from his wallet and asked, "So how many Trinidad dollars do I get? I don't know nothing about money changing." The exchange rate is 7 for 1. "Does that mean I give you 7 American dollars for 1 Trinidad dollar?" The man had just counted out to himself 700 Trinidad dollars, but upon hearing Rudy's comment, he stopped abruptly. Studying the American's face for a moment, he replied with a smile, "Why, yes, that mean if you give me 100 American dollar, I give you 14 Trinidad dollar." You sure that's right?" Rudy asked. "Of course, trust me." As soon as the transaction concluded, the little man disappeared. Rudy returned to his wife with a puzzled look on his face. He wasn't sure the exchange had gone properly. How much of that Trinidad money did you get? Belinda asked. $14. Oh, perfect. Now we can buy the candy bars. Munching on the chocolate, the woman suddenly realized they had no more Trinidad money. To her husband, she declared, "Oh, we should have changed more dollars. Now we got to go back in that line again." "Guess so," said Rudy. He was still trying to figure out the transaction with the stranger. Somehow it didn't seem right. Everything became perfectly clear at the exchange booth when Rudy gave the money man another 100 American dollars and received 700 Trinidad dollars in return. To save face, Rudy said not a word to Belinda about having been cheated. Before leaving the airport, the couple purchased a tourist guidebook. Belinda sat on a bench and perused it while Rudy went to the restroom. After his return, she reported a revolting experience. "Must be a lot of weird people around here. While you were in the restroom, a woman tried to sell me tickets to a cricket match. Can you imagine anything more disgusting? I hate insects." "Oh, they must race them. A cousin of mine in Ashtabula used to have a flea farm." "Don't talk about it anymore. It gives me the creeps." "Did you find anything interesting in that guidebook? We need to kill some time until the start of Carnival." "Yeah, up in the north of the island is a great bird sanctuary. You and I both like birds. Maybe we could go there." "Sounds good, but how do we get there?" Eager to answer that question, a swarm of cab drivers besieged the young Americans as they emerged from the terminal. "Where you want to go?" bellowed a large, aggressive man. "To the bird place," Rudy replied. "Hop in," said the driver. From the airport, the cab traveled straight to downtown Port of Spain. Looking about in bewilderment, the Americans wondered where a bird sanctuary might be located among this assemblage of concrete and brick buildings. Finally, the taxi driver pulled to a halt in front of the Firebird nightclub. Opening the door for his passengers, the man said with a smile, "This is the hottest nightclub in the whole city. It will be rockin' during Carnival." No, wailed Rudy. "We want the place with all the birds." Snatching the guidebook from Belinda's hands, he pointed to a map. "The Asa Wright Nature Center." "Oh, that what you mean." Soon the taxi was on the lightly traveled highway heading east. Half an hour later, the vehicle turned onto a narrow, isolated road that twisted its way through a thick forest. At the Nature Center, Rudy paid and dismissed the driver, only to wonder, moments after his departure, how they would return to Port of Spain. There must be a way," he muttered to himself. Situated on 183 acres at 1,200 feet of elevation, the Asa Wright Nature Center was a Caribbean wonder. Primarily a bird sanctuary, it protected other forms of wildlife as well. The Friesens marveled at its beauty. While awaiting the next guided tour, the impetuous Rudy whispered in his wife's ear, "Why don't we sneak out and go on our own tour? I don't want to wait another hour. They don't have to know what we're doing." Despite harboring reservations about the wisdom of venturing out alone in an unfamiliar forest, Belinda yielded, as she always did, to Rudy's proposals. Walking casually out of the visitor center, the couple followed a pathway into the woods until they were completely isolated from other people. At that point, the husband took his wife by the arm and led her off the path into the dense vegetation. The warm, humid air was alive with sounds and flying creatures. Staying away from trails in order to avoid detection, the Friesens advanced deeper and deeper into the luxuriant growth. Now and then they encountered a familiar bird, a tanager, a hummingbird, or a toucan. Suddenly, Rudy had an inspiration. "You know what?" he said. "I'm going to catch me one of them toucan. We could sneak it back home. I'll bet we'd be the only people in all of Cleveland to own one. Think what Edie and Hugh would say. "Oh, I don't think that's such a good idea, Rudy. This is supposed to be a bird refuge. Besides, how could we ever keep it from escaping?" "I know this is a bird sanctuary, but they got hundreds of them here, I'll bet. One little bird wouldn't be much of a loss. I got a plastic bag in my pocket. I can put him in it so he won't escape." "Oh, all right." 5 minutes later, the pair spotted a toucan on a low branch of a towering tree. "I'm going to get that one," Rudy said. He began to climb at once. The bird didn't budge until the man was almost within arm's reach. Then, with a little flutter, it moved to a higher branch. Not one to give up easily, Rudy resumed the climb. As before, the creature escaped capture at the last instant by taking refuge at a higher elevation. This made the human more determined than ever. One more time, the toucan eluded his pursuer by leaping to a loftier branch. Now he rested near the end of a slender limb, at least 40 feet above the ground. Alarmed by the danger, Belinda shouted to her husband, "Forget about that bird. Come down before you get hurt." Rudy replied, "In a minute, honey. I'm just about to get him." The young man crept out along the limb. In seconds, the toucan would be his. "Come down now," Belinda demanded. As she shouted, the bird flew to a higher perch. Disgusted, Rudy was about to berate his wife for yelling, but as he looked down, an overwhelming panic suddenly seized him. In the pursuit, he hadn't realized how high he had climbed. Rudy grabbed the limb and hung on for dear life. "Come down, Rudy," Belinda shouted again. "I can't." "Why can't you?" Before Rudy could confess his fear, the limb on which he rested made a cracking sound. "What's that noise?" I think the limb is breaking. I don't dare move." "What are we going to do?" "I don't know. Just let me think a while." After 5 minutes of silence, Belinda said, "Well, I don't know. I'm afraid the limb will break off if I move anymore." "But you can't stay there forever. Do you want me to get help?" "That would be good, but do you know where you are? Could you find your way out of this jungle and back to me again?" "No." "Then you better stay here. We don't know what other kinds of animals there are around here. Besides, you might get lost." Belinda began to imagine lions, tigers, and jaguars behind every tree, but she knew she couldn't budge. After several minutes of silence, Rudy offered some words of encouragement. He said, "You know, they're taking tours through this place every couple of hours. If we wait patiently, we're bound to hear them walking somewhere nearby." Two hours elapsed without a sound of human activity, but the limb made no more noises. Rudy came to a painful decision. He said, "Honey, I guess I was wrong. The tours must not pass close to this place. Otherwise, we'd have heard something by now." "So what are we going to do?" "I guess I'll just have to climb down by myself." It took 10 minutes for the young man to gain sufficient courage to attempt to move. Finally, he began to inch his way back toward the trunk. He was making progress and gaining confidence when another cracking sound erupted. Rudy froze in place. The thought of falling to the ground, bouncing off tree limbs, made him resolute. He wouldn't move until rescued. For the rest of the day, he ignored Belinda's entreaties, even her tears. With the onset of darkness, new problems arose. Mosquitoes in large numbers descended upon the couple. Excited to find an ample supply of warm blood, the insects made the most of their opportunity. Clad in shorts and a light blouse, Belinda was a perfect victim. Though better outfitted, Rudy's precarious perch prevented most defensive maneuvers. For 3 hours, husband and wife swatted and slapped as best as they could, but their attackers showed no mercy. The assault ended sometime after 10 p.m. About that hour, the temperature began to drop to more comfortable levels. Exhausted and distraught, Belinda nevertheless fell into a merciful slumber at the base of the tree. But for her, it was a long night marked by shivering and bad dreams. Rudy catnapped late in the night despite nearly falling to the ground on several occasions. Before dawn, the mosquitoes returned, but this second attack was more like a snack than a full meal. As the forest reclaimed its daytime vigor, the Friesens renewed discussion of their plight. Rudy was adamant. He would not move until help arrived. Belinda was equally intransigent. He must liberate himself from the tree. The heat of the quarrel grew with the increase in temperature. Husband and wife were starting to engage in profanity and name-calling when suddenly they heard human voices. Belinda ran in that direction and encountered 2 nature center employees. Within half an hour, they freed Rudy from the tree with the aid of a long ladder. Having to explain how he got into that predicament was humiliating to the young American. His ego would not permit him to tell the truth. Concocting a plausible explanation, he blurted out, "I thought a jaguar was after me." The men roared with laughter. Later, when arrangements had been made for the couple's return to Port of Spain, Rudy overheard one rescuer tell the driver, "This guy climbed a tree to save himself from a jaguar and left his wife to be killed on the ground." Back in the capital city, the Friesens looked for lodging. They were shocked to discover there was none available. Every hotel room in the city had been booked for months. Sitting on a street corner bench, the dirty, exhausted, mosquito-bitten couple felt terribly depressed. The center of joy, as the city advertised itself, had no space for them. As Belinda started to cry, Rudy put an arm around her. A car stopped in front of them and a man got out. His face expressed deep concern. "Why you cry, lady? You no have place to stay?" "We can't find anything," explained Rudy. "I can't help you," said the man. "Give me your suitcases." Without waiting for a sign of assent, the stranger took their suitcases and placed them in his car. And then, while the Americans collected their other possessions from the bench, the Good Samaritan leaped into his car and sped away. "Hey, come back!" shouted Rudy. It was a futile cry. The thief had escaped. More tears from Belinda and more sympathy from Rudy. Within minutes, an old woman emerged from a house behind the bench and approached the sorrowful pair. "I saw what that man did. We have too many criminals like him round here. How can I help you?" Amidst tears, Belinda asked, "Do you know a place where we could stay just a few days?" The woman patted Belinda on the arm. "I'll see, honey. Don't cry. My cousin Edwin has a large house. Maybe he can help you." Within an hour, the distressed couple were settled in a modest but comfortable room of cousin Edwin's home. After a quick meal at a nearby restaurant, the exhausted pair decided to take an afternoon nap. Neither husband nor wife awoke until 8 the next morning, when their generous host knocked on the door to offer breakfast. The resiliency of youth displayed itself that morning. By 10 o'clock, the rejuvenated Americans had forgotten their previous adversity and were planning a full day of activities. Before the start of Carnival, they hoped to enjoy all the other amenities Trinidad had to offer. Today, they would travel to Pitch Lake, a large natural body of tar and a wonder of the world. But first, they had to exchange more money and purchase some clothes. Luckily, their passports and valuables had not been in their suitcases. They reached Pitch Lake about 3 in the afternoon. After paying an admission fee, the couple entered the area. Signs warned visitors to stay with their tour groups and to follow only designated pathways. The Friesens were the final two people in a party of 25. Halfway through the excursion, Rudy whispered in his wife's ear, "Let's sneak off on this side path. In this paper cuff, I'd like to collect some pitch to show our friends back home." Belinda barely had time to say, "But we shouldn't," before Rudy pulled her in the direction that he wanted to go. The young man stopped in a spot at lake's edge where the vegetation would conceal their actions. "Wait right here," Rudy commanded as he clambered over a retaining barrier. His plan was to make one quick scoop of the cup and hurry back to his wife. Unknown to him, however, the ground in that location was soft and oozy. He began to sink into greenish-black slime. Despite great effort, he could not extricate himself. Realizing that he was not only mired in the mud, but continuing to sink very slowly, he called desperately to Belinda, "Go get help, quick!" By the time rescuers arrived, Rudy was waist-deep in pitch. 4 men and a winch finally succeeded in pulling him out. However, most of the man's body was coated with sticky tar that refused to come off. The rest of the day and most of the evening were devoted to a succession of baths and applications of assorted substances designed to loosen the tar. With bloodshot eyes, the young couple arose from bed at 6 a.m. the following morning. They couldn't sleep longer even if they wanted. It was Carnival Monday. Loud noise filled the air. People were singing, instruments were playing, and parades were starting. The Friesens couldn't miss this. After a hurried breakfast, Rudy put on his pirate outfit, which, by good fortune, covered the few remaining blotches of tar that he hadn't managed to remove from his skin. Belinda donned the sexy bunny costume that she had purchased the day before. Together, the happy pair ran excitedly out of the house to experience Carnival. In the street, a thick file of costume figures danced from left to right. Brown and black faces smiled and laughed as they sang. Joining the procession, Rudy and Belinda tried to match the lively movements of the dancers' feet. No one seemed to mind Rudy's clumsiness. For blocks, the human stream flowed until it reached Independence Square. Gushing forth from the street that had carried them there, the dancers separated into little eddies of activity, swirling and spinning about the square. In this thickening mass of humanity, the Americans found themselves drifting apart against their wills. The dance had its own mind, and they were its slaves. Despite great effort, Rudy could not get to his wife. Helpless, he watched Belinda fade away in the distance. 2 hours of dancing exhausted the young man, but he couldn't stop. To stop was to risk death under trampling feet. So he went on, praying for the ordeal to end. Just before noon, Rudy found himself near the edge of the square. With a mighty and desperate surge, he broke through the crowd. Gasping and sweating profusely, he dropped onto a chair in the sidewalk cafe. He ordered a Coke and did not budge for an hour. Finally, he wobbled off to a taxi and returned to his lodgings, where he promptly flopped onto the bed. Belinda staggered into the room just as Rudy was falling asleep. Not wanting to show weakness, both of them instantly sprang to life. "Isn't Carnival great?" remarked Rudy. "Yeah, I wouldn't miss it for the world," countered Belinda. Within 15 minutes, the pleasure seekers were in deep slumber. Despite the loud music outdoors, they didn't awaken until 7 in the evening. The first thought that came to both of them was, "Oh no, he or she is going to make me dance out there again." When they had freshened up a bit, Rudy felt obliged to ask, Well, are you ready to go? Forcing a smile, Belinda replied enthusiastically, Of course, let's get to it. Then suddenly she had an idea. Rudy, I know we're eager to resume dancing, but we haven't had anything to eat since breakfast. To keep our strength up for the dancing, we really should have dinner. You're right, said Rudy. Edwin recommended a nearby restaurant named Alfredo's. Specializes in local dishes, he said. You'll love it. Though not fancy, Alfredo's did look clean. One oddity was the absence of tourists among the clientele. The Americans stood out as outsiders. A second peculiarity was the lack of a menu. The waiter explained, Here we serve only Trinidad food. Tonight we have just 3 entrees, stewed goat, squid, and agouti. Which will you have? Immediately dismissing the first 2 items, Rudy inquired about the third. Well, agouti is a local game specialty. It is served with mushrooms and onions in a peppery sauce. What do you think, honey? Asked Rudy. Sounds okay to me. I like spicy food. Husband and wife found the appetizers to be very tasty, but the main course, though visually appealing, was rather skimpy on the meat, so Rudy requested a double order. Having taken this step, he later felt obliged to eat every bite of the entree, even after he discovered its strong and unpleasant taste. Leaving the restaurant with full stomachs, the Friesens decided to rest briefly in their room before continuing the Trinidad adventure. At the lodging, they found their host in a rocking chair on the front porch. Edwin asked, How was it? Oh, wonderful, the Americans replied simultaneously. What did you have? Agouti, Rudy said. Say, what is that anyway? A large rodent. You see them running all over the island. Belinda's face turned ashen white. Neither she nor Rudy spoke a word until they were in their room. Oh my God, exploded Belinda as she flopped on the bed. Holding his stomach, Rudy couldn't utter a word. For the remainder of the night, while calypso music continued to play in the streets, the couple stayed indoors, taking turns vomiting in the bathroom. The music was still playing at 8 the next morning when the beleaguered pair sat down at Edwin's breakfast table for some orange juice and a roll. Through a window, they could see lively dancers snaking their way down the street. With a vacant stare on her face, Belinda asked, How did they do it? There was a pause. Rudy took a sip of juice and replied softly, I don't know. There was a longer pause before Belinda said, Thank God this carnival lasts only 2 days. Can you imagine how many corpses there would be in the morgue if this thing went on for even another day? Without hesitation, Rudy declared, It's possible that we'll be among them. This day has just begun. For the next few minutes, neither spoke. Suffering from exhaustion and muscle aches, they wanted to conserve energy and enjoy a peaceful moment of inactivity before the demands of Carnival. Finally, Rudy broke the silence. I'm not leaving here without doing the Limbo. I've told everyone at home about it. How could I go back and say I didn't even try? They wouldn't understand. Doing the Limbo was certainly not on Belinda's agenda, but she said nothing. When Edwin came by to pick up the breakfast dishes, Rudy asked, Where can we do the Limbo? Go to Queen's Park Savannah tonight, about 7 o'clock. Close by is a place where the steel bands practice. You will enjoy the music. 2 or 3 hours later, there will be a Limbo contest in the Savannah. Can we participate? Sure, anyone can do it. Have fun. The Friesens planned to follow Edwin's advice. During the day, they would stroll casually about the city and avoid dancing. That way they'd be fresh for the evening's limbo contest. This strategy seemed to work well. By mid-afternoon, the youthful pair had recuperated substantially. With his confidence restored, Rudy was even suggesting that they rejoin the street dancers. To dissuade him, Belinda had to conjure up the memory of their being prisoners of the crowd. "You wouldn't want to miss out on your last chance to do the limbo, would you?" she asked. For once, Rudy heeded his wife's advice. At 5 o'clock, the couple ate an early and moderate dinner. When it was time to dress for the contest, Belinda announced that she would not participate. Rudy was disappointed, but he did not let her decision deter him. He told his wife soberly, "I'm going to win this thing." To maximize his chances, the young man removed his pirate costume and dressed in shorts, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes. At 7 o'clock, the pair reached the Queen's Park Savannah. A large sign warned participants of the limbo contest, "Good for the limber, but bad for the lumbar." Rudy didn't take the warning seriously. He felt confident of his abilities. For 3 hours, the Americans drank beer while listening to the steel drum bands. Finally, it was time for the big event. Rudy was one of 28 people who had paid $20 each to take part. He became contestant number 14. The top 3 performers would receive prizes of $200, $100, and $50 Trinidad dollars. Surveying the competition, Rudy whispered to his wife, "They don't look tough to me." After a brief introductory speech, the organizer of the contest wished participants good luck. Aides put the supporting stands in place and set the crossbar at 4 feet. Everything was ready. With a calypso beat playing in the background, a young man passed effortlessly under the bar. Rudy watched in surprise as contestant after contestant duplicated his feat. Even a fat old woman performed the trick to the laughter and applause of the crowd. Finally, it was Rudy's turn. The American tried to mimic the technique of his predecessors. With feet widespread and arms outstretched, he maneuvered beneath the bar, only to slip on a candy wrapper carelessly tossed by an onlooker. The crowd roared with laughter as he fell on his rear end. On the verge of disqualification, Rudy got the second chance that observers demanded. Realizing that limbo dancing was harder than he had believed, the American focused very carefully. With great concentration and the support of the crowd, Rudy barely cleared the bar. All of the remaining contestants succeeded with ease. Now the bar was reset to 3 feet 6 inches. 12 supple bodies and 1 corpulent one passed flawlessly beneath it. It was Rudy's turn again. The nervous American could see the eager expressions of the onlookers who anticipated a mishap. Those looks made the young man angry. Somehow he would win this contest. With feet spread wide, arms outstretched, and head back almost to his heels, he advanced towards the bar. Suddenly, Rudy heard a cracking noise and felt a sharp pain in his lower back. He could hear people laughing when he fell. Unable to rise, he lay on the ground as Belinda rushed to his aid. An hour later, the young foreigners were in Port of Spain General Hospital. X-rays and a medical examination revealed a cracked vertebra. Doctors recommended that Rudy spend a day in their facility, but the patient refused. With only 2 days left before their return to America, the Friesens wanted to spend some time by the sea. The next morning, the couple took a bus to Maracas Bay Beach. Even with the aid of Belinda, Rudy moved at the pace of an octogenarian. It was painful for him to settle into a chair on the sand. As they sat there sipping sodas, each of the pair was lost in a dream world. Belinda was thinking, next time we go on vacation, it'll be to some really peaceful place like Tahiti or Hawaii. Rudy was thinking, next year I'm going to come back here and win that contest. And while I'm at it, I'm going to get me a toucan as well. End of the story. I hope this story doesn't discourage you from going to Trinidad for Mardi Gras. I'm sure it's lots of fun, especially if you're young and energetic. Although I personally have not experienced that island celebration, I have a very good idea what it's all about because I have enjoyed Carnival in South America. The lesson to be learned from out on the Limbo is that you should not travel abroad without preparation. In March, I shall present to you perhaps my best murder mystery. Remember that I retain the copyright to my works. Thank you for watching Dramas, Dreams, and Drollery.